Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on October 2nd, Wednesday, 2013 at, about 1 in the afternoon, Eastern Time. Now, for today's bit of fun and foolishness, I happened to cross something yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. Excuse me. And it was in the section called Notable and Quotable in the editorial page, the back part of the first section. Well, this was in the digital edition, but I'm sure it was in the print edition too, probably. Now this piece is from a letter written by a graduate student up at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And the fellow's name is Jason Morgan, and he's a doctoral candidate, and we have Nats, by the way. And he was complaining to his supervisor about the school-mandated diversity training for teaching assistants. And so he wrote this on September 22nd, and it never went on to give any supervisor's reply or administrative reply. But I'll read it to you first, then I'll give you the exchange that my son and I went through, because he teaches at 7th and 8th grade sort of geography, history, psychology, economics. I'm trying to avoid using the word social studies at Immaculate Conception not high school, but Immaculate Conception School down in Columbus. And I sent this to him, and I said, "Has it reached the Roman Catholic junior high schools yet? Given your line of work, I thought you'd appreciate it." So I sent him this. So I'll read it now. At the end of yesterday's diversity, quote, re-education, unquote, we were told that our next lesson would include a presentation on, quote, trans students, unquote. At that coming session, according to the handouts we were given, we will learn how to let students choose their own pronouns, how to correct other students who mistakenly use the wrong pronouns, and how to ask people which pronouns they prefer. For example, I use the pronouns he, him, is. I want to make sure I address you correctly. What pronouns do you use? Presumably this would be to a guy, would be from a guy to another guy that, presumed guy, in the sense that he looks like a guy, acts, may or may not act like a guy, but looks like a guy. So apparently the students are supposed to initiate this little colloquy so that they're all sensitive to each other's needs. To return to the text, also on the agenda for next week there's just too many quotes to include here, so you'll just have to assume where they are. Also on the agenda for next week are important trans struggles, as well as those of the intersexed and other gender variant communities. Okay, that's one category. Now, next category. They're also going to have on the agenda standing up to the rules of gender, and a very helpful glossary of related terms and acronyms, to wit, trans, for those who, quote, identify along the gender variant spectrum, unquote, and, quote, genderqueer, unquote. For those who consider their gender, and this is the great phrase in all this, those who consider their gender outside the binary gender system. I hasten to reiterate that I am quoting from diversity handouts and I am not making any of this up. That's from the graduate student. He then goes on to talk about how much he loves to teach, Japanese history from the 1100s, and how much he considers it an honor and joy to teach students. I take my job very seriously and look forward to coming to work each day. It is most certainly not my job, though, to cheer along anyone, student or otherwise, in their psychological confusion. Well, I thought this guy just stated it wonderfully. I will say there are probably I would have to estimate. Now I'm just estimating this. I don't have any data on this, but there can't we live in a large country. We have over 300 plus million people here. So it stands to reason there's going to be a few corners of the sexual and psychological envelope that are filled by, people that fall into those corners for whatever reason. Whether they're made that way, choose to be that way, or just for the hell of it act that way, it's hard to say. But yes, there's some out there. Now, I think at some point we just get down to sheer logistics and economics. How much time and energy and money and resources are going to be devoted to dealing with the very, very unfortunate few or the very, very perverse few, depending on how you, some are unfortunate, some are perverse. Some are just contrary. That just want to make life a bunch of grief for the rest of them, those around them. Although, admittedly, some of them may be having some grief legitimate grief in their own lives. The only folks I have any real sympathy for are, let's see, they almost used the right word for it here. Intersex. Well, that basically is a fancy word for folks who have the variants of the Adreno-genital syndrome, which is it's a genetic mutation that it's not a genetic mutation. It's a developmental anomaly at the time of birth. I mean, you can have a genetic male born that genetic male that looks like a phenotypic female, and less and even profoundly more unusually, but it does happen occasionally. You can have a genetic female that has the phenotype of a male. Well, it sort of looks like it's the phenotype of a male, but upon further review, and upon further review, what generally happens when they get around 8, 9, 10, or 11, it becomes clear that that's not the case. The problem is these folks get raised according to how they look. Then when the hormones kick in, then if somebody's been raised think themselves as if a genetic male's been raised think themselves as a female all his life, then when the hormones kick in, and there's this huge amount of cognitive dissonance and so forth, and that's when generally plans are made to do something surgically definitive one way or the other. But that used to cover the waterfront as far as the terms transsexual was concerned until a lot of this current nonsense is going on. I do not live in the. I'm a gay man. I make no bones about it, but I do not live in transgender town or transsexual town. Well, anyway, so I thought this was a fun piece, so I sent it to my son, and so he wrote back. This was last night. This was all last night after I had gone into my chemo chair to sort of retire. Nonetheless, the lure of the internet called me and beguiled me. So I started doing stuff. And he wrote back and he says, I almost threw up in disgust. The day I have to think about the gender variables in any situation is the day I quit teaching and become, for better or worse, a novelist that writes stories about people who throw up at the thought of worrying about gender variables. And then he tells this great story. I'll try to clean it up a bit. I'm reminded of my freshman year at Ohio State when the TA suggested we spell women, W-O-M-E-N, W-O-M-Y-N, in order to respect women, W-O-M-E-N. This is the same, well, I'll say individual, who, in front of the class, asked if I was a smoker as she passed back essays we had written. She told me she could smell the smoke in the pages. So many possible retorts flooded my mind. Instead, I said, I was indeed a smoker and that I had polished off a couple of beers during the final draft as well. I got an A in any case, although oddly ended up getting an A- for the quarter. I wish I'd kept a photocopy of the teacher evaluation I filled out on her. It was some of my best work. I remember years ago hearing him, he brought out this thing, this teacher evaluation that he filled out, and oh wow, I wish I had a copy. He just had the one copy, and and this is before I had the scanner and stuff where I could have photocopied it. So that may be gone in the mists of time here, guys. Well, as you know, I can't just let things like that rest, can I? I sent back, ask for a show of hands tomorrow, meaning in his class, not in the teacher's lunchroom. Ask for a show of hands tomorrow, in your class. How many of you guys, meaning his students, consider your gender outside the binary gender system? I imagine you could get disability retirement for mental illness by springing that one on the lads and lasses. Copy this attachment off and post it in the lunchroom and see how many folks take it seriously. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised to see a number of them take it seriously. That's the terrifying thing, isn't it? See how many folks take it seriously. Sort of like a Tijuana donkey show. An example to which I alluded, a few days back in a different context. Perhaps more solemn, but still profound. Have, his son, my grandson, Carter, take it over for show and tell at his little Lutheran preschool. Well, it's like preschool school. I mean, it's like preschool school, not preschool. Have Carter take it over for show and tell. What fun! I'm getting on a roll. I may have to make a video about this, but probably tomorrow. I have so much material I can mine. Well, Res ipsa loquitur on that one, guys. I'm not trying to advocate being inhumane to the very, very few, and I emphasize very, very few people that legitimately fall into this problematic category. No, in fact, when I was a medical student and a surgery resident at Columbus Children's Hospital, there were a number of these individuals that had been taken care of there for upwards of 25 years, and even as late as the age of their early 20s, mid 20s, they'd be coming back to have various surgical revisions to some of these procedures that have been done to make them either physically, phenotypically congruent with their genetics, or make their phenotypic appearance appear more realistic despite their genetic discongruence. So, I mean, it's, adreno-genital syndrome's a bastard of a problem. And, this is the 30th Columbus Children's Hospital admission for so-and-so. I had to dictate the charts. I mean, it was a very educational experience, wading through 30 some admissions to dictate the charts. And so now, also on a more solemn note, I've been watching. Excuse me. I've read Denise Williams's blogs about her son's death in Afghanistan, and watched the 101st Airborne Division's video of that particular battle. I'm not can't say anything. I'm not going to dishonor that by saying anything. So on that note, bye-bye, YouTubers.